Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 8 of The Vinyl Cut. As always, my name is Chris, and with me is my partner in crime, Kevin, and we are recording this in Kevin's Cut and Run studio in East Lansing, Michigan. Kevin, how the hell are you tonight?
Good. How you doing, Chris?
Well, you know, illness is kind of running rampant through my house right now.
Oh, boy,
so,
that's fun.
Yeah, like flu, and you have a 6-month-old who's been sick. And so.
No, we went through that last month, and I've heard everybody else getting sick in the past couple of weeks. So I think hopefully we're in the clear and have had everything else everybody else has had.
Yeah, I mean, and, you know, hopefully no one will get the coronavirus. If not, we'll just hold court in your basement here.
I hope to get the corona flu this weekend at some point.
And ride it out. But anyway, this is a special episode of The Vinyl Cut. We still don't really know what to call this. We just call this we're taking a break from John Lennon, and Kevin and I like to do these little challenge episodes where we challenge each other to listen to music that they might not otherwise check out or have not heard before. And in this episode, it was my turn to challenge Kevin. And I gave him the assignment to listen to David Crosby's, and what I consider to be a masterpiece, his 1971, his first solo album, If I Could Only Remember My Name. And tonight we're going to talk about it, and we're going to get Kevin's thoughts on it.
Recorded February 22nd, 1970, or I'm sorry. Okay, released February 22nd, 1971. It was recorded in San Francisco at Wally Heider Studios. I don't know anything about that. Is that a dead connection since...
I don't think so, but there's a lot of Grateful Dead connection on this album.
Yeah, there is. Who all plays on this?
Well, so the backstory on this album is this was recorded at a time where Crosby was going through a tumultuous period. Not too long before this, his girlfriend at the time, Christine, was tragically killed in a car accident just taking her cat to the vet.
Holy cow.
Crosby had said in many interviews that this was the first time he had ever been in love with someone. Obviously you're David Crosby, or you were in the Byrds, and
Sure. Traveling
Crosby,
the world.
Stills, and Nash, and finally he had found someone that was his soulmate, and he kind of dipped into a deep depression, and the person that came along and kind of pulled him out of all this was Jerry Garcia. Of course, all these musicians were all in the same area at the same time, right? The whole Laurel Canyon scene, like, Stephen Stills lived next door to Frank Zappa, and Peter Tork was up the hill from Brian Wilson, and David Crosby lived with Joni Mitchell, Joni Mitchell lived with Graham Nash. It was just a crazy time for music. So, but anyway, Jerry kind of came along and was like, "Hey man, let's play some music," and got the ball rolling on this album. And basically, the band was called the Planet Earth Rock and Roll Orchestra, which was a name that was given by Paul Kantner of the Jefferson Airplane. And this album has an incredible cast. You have Neil Young, you have Joni Mitchell, you have Greg Raleigh from Santana, you have Mickey Hart from The Dead, your favorite. You have Bill Kreutzmann from the Grateful Dead, Phil Lesh, basically all the Grateful Dead except for Bob Weir. Of course, Graham Nash, Grace Slick, Paul Kantner, pretty much all of Jefferson Airplane.
Did you say Santana?
Greg Raleigh was in Santana.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep. And then later Journey, another one of your favorites.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, well, it's crazy lineup.
Yeah, this ensemble played together on a number of albums. This was their first. No, I'm sorry. Paul Kantner's and Jefferson Starship's Blows Against the Empire was the first album that all these musicians appeared together on. And then Crosby's If I Could Only Remember My Name. And then that same year, Songs for Beginners by Graham Nash. And then in 1971, Sunfighter, which was Paul Kantner and Grace Slick. And then Papa John Creech, he played electric fiddle in Jefferson Starship. Anyway, a Mickey Hart album, and then another Paul Kantner album. So, yeah, this group of musicians were, you couldn't have asked for a better group of musicians, I think, to get together. But, so yeah, we just heard the first track, Music is Love.
Solid. Let's hear what Crosby has to say about working with Jerry.
If I had to pick one musician to speak for all musicians, I would have picked Jerry Garcia.
Why?
He was brilliant. First of all, the most admirable quality in a human being is that they have a good heart. But the second best is if they're intelligent. He was both. He was a very, very bright guy and a tremendous player, and my friend. And we, if we weren't out on the road, trying to make a buck, we were goofing off in Marin County, and we had time on our hands and making music that was kind of out on the edge, playing songs we didn't really know, and taking chances musically. That was fun with Jerry, because he was quick, and it was a lot of fun. I wish he were still around.
Many of us miss him.
My good partners, we were riding back to camp. We were feeling very fine. The air was clear, slightly damp. celebrate the ride of the train. We were talking kind of low and lazy about not having to go out soon again. We hadn't been back at home 2 hours. Heard a heart cry night in the night. Now you know that's a signal from young Billy who's off central.
That's the second track, Cowboy Movie, and it's just got a nice groove to it, man. I mean,
It does.
and I think David Crosby doesn't get enough credit for his guitar playing. He was obviously overshadowed by Steven Stills, who's phenomenal.
Sure.
And then you had Neil Young. But, you know, Crosby was always just sitting back and adding that.
Yeah, he was solid, and a few times within this album, especially with that first song that we heard, "Music Is Love," David really got into this open tuning. Like that song. I think it was that song. It might be another song on this album too that is in the Guinevere tuning. Like you just strum it and you kind of hear the ghost of Guinevere, no matter what, just because you recognize the tuning of that guitar.
Yeah. Yep.
And there's a couple times in this album where he did that, and that's a David Crosby thing.
Yeah. I just very underrated. Just never gets mentioned as a great guitar player.
Well, you're right about him being overshadowed. He was never really in a band where he was the lead guitarist, but solid all-around guitar player. Then you got Neil and Steven Stills in the band.
I've always had a hard time. You hear that background, the dee, 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 dee. I've always tried to, like, is that Jerry or is
That's
it Neil?
Neil.
Yeah, it's got to be Neil.
That's Neil. You'll hear, obviously it's Phil playing.
Oh, Phil drops bombs on this album.
Yeah, he's Phil's Phil. I thought he controlled himself in this song. Personally, for my taste, I feel like Phil kind of, not that he gets out of pocket, it's that he wanders off sometimes, and I miss some deep in the groove. So, but that's just a personal preference. He's a great bass player. I've seen him a couple times live. It's its own thing.
You know, I wasn't going to mention this till later, but there's a great 4-part podcast about David Crosby. It's him one-on-one with a friend of his. It's called Freak Flag Flying.
Okay, yeah. I was looking for that before we did this. I was going to listen to it today, but I could not find it, and I should have went back and listen. I think you mentioned it in a previous podcast.
Yeah, it is effing phenomenal. The stories Crosby has to tell, obviously. I won't get into all of them because there's tons and tons. But anyway, what I was getting to is he talked about Phil's playing on this album and how Phil came in and understood that he just needed to
take it easy
and play in the pocket. And,
all right.
So yeah,
that makes sense. Obviously, this song really reminds me of it's got a similar groove.
Be on my side, I'll be on your side, baby.
well, it's just gonna have that sound whenever Neil paints.
It's a Neil groove for sure. But I love what David did with it for the lyrics. one of the issues I have with this album, I sometimes have a hard time finding the song. Like, you know, this song really doesn't have a chorus. It's just kind of a wandering, almost Bob Dylan thing.
Well, again, I think that was kind of the intent. I mean, this has Garcia written all over it, and I think the songs, I don't want to say were haphazardly put together,
but they're very jam. You could, like, this song was obviously built off of a jam.
Yeah, and that's what this album was. I was telling my wife about this. Just think about how, if I could go back in time, there'd be many music events I would go to, but one of them would be the studio when they were recording this. All those fucking amazing musicians getting high, you know, writing music, just jamming, singing. This album was a healing it was a healing, what's the word? It was something Crosby needed to go through to heal. So the songs seem kind of meandering, but
sure,
that's almost what his life was.
Well, and it's not produced by George Martin. It's produced by Jerry Garcia. It's going to be, you know, it's going to probably be a little more jammy, a little more open-ended, a little less song-oriented.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, one way I would describe this album. Although I really like the first song. But that was all Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, right?
Stills is not on this album.
Okay.
The first song was it was Crosby, Nash, Neil, and Joni Mitchell sings on that one.
Yeah, I could hear in the.
And so does Grace Slick.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah. What a crazy time that must have been. 71. Wow. Let's take a look at the next track. Okay, this song, for example, a great fucking, like, the song is all there. Like, finish the lyrics. You know what I mean?
I don't think it needs lyrics. It's, you got that Nash and Crosby harmonies.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's so good.
Yeah, I just love it so much.
This song is a prime example of what I was talking about with the Guinevere tuning. You can just hear, no matter what, you're going to hear a little bit of it. love the drumming on that song.
Yeah, that's Michael Shreve from Santana.
Oh, God. He was so good at Woodstock. Holy shit. I saw he was even part of their big reunion they had when Neil Schon came back a couple years ago, and they did with Greg Raleigh, the actual band Santana reunion.
Yeah.
I saw he was drumming.
Yeah, it was Shreve, Neil Schon, and Greg Raleigh was back. Basically, most of all the old Santana. They only played a few shows, and now Santana's back going on tour with one surviving member of Earth, Wind, and Fire this summer.
It should be called Carlos Santana.
Yeah, it should just be called Carlos Santana. But yeah, that song was, I'm probably slaughtering the name, but it's Tamel Pace High. And yeah, it's just again, just a nice groove. This whole album just grooves.
Let's have a little listen here of David talking about the alternate tuning that he came across and capitalized on with CSNY and this album.
A kid named Jack Wiltz, I think was his name, showed me the Epidsode, the EBD-GAD tuning, and I just went crazy. That's what I wrote Guinevere in, that's what I wrote Deja Vu in. That one's like this. It's EBD-GAD. That's the same one for David.
I thought I met a man who said he knew a man who knew what was going on. I was mistaken. Only another stranger that I knew. Darkness, I was mistaken. Only reflections of a shadow that I saw.
There's a great song. Everything's there for that one.
Oh my God. I love this song so much. Jerry Garcia's pedal steel.
Yeah. Just the right touch.
And the lyrics, the background vocals, and the story behind it, which has a Beatles connection.
Oh, yeah?
This song was written for George Harrison.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, that could totally be on All Things Must Pass.
Well, the story behind this song is when Crosby and Harrison were friends. And when Crosby was going through the tragedy of losing his girlfriend, Harrison suggested that he turn to the Hindu, the Swami,
the Hare Krishna.
And David Crosby is a fierce agnostic, and so this song, if you listen to the lyrics, are written to Harrison basically saying all your God stuff is you're full of shit. Oh, here comes Joni.
Goddamn Phil and his farty bass.
Oh, but Jerry. He couldn't have played enough pedal steel.
Yeah, I never get sick of hearing the pedal steel.
He gave it up in the mid-70s, but
It's a son of a bitch. It is a very difficult instrument to play, and definitely one that's impossible to master. It's a mountain I want to climb someday, but oh man, I had kids that might have blown it.
yeah. So I this is my favorite song on the album. I love everything about this song. I love the story behind it. I love the musicians. I love the lyrics.
I think it's definitely the best song on the album.
The harmonies. I was mistaken.
There's the Beach Boys, there's Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and then there's the Beatles when it comes to harmony.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, man, who has a better harmony sound, Beach Boys or Crosby, Stills, and Nash? Oh, and Young or whatever.
Well, the harmony basically came from Crosby and Nash.
Yeah, for the most part.
They were highly sought after. They were on a lot of other people. I was gonna have that list with me, but I don't. They were on a lot of people's albums, adding harmonies. Off the top of my head, and everyone's gonna make fun of me, but the only one I can remember is they sing back up on Jackson Brown's "The Pretender."
Oh yeah. Let's check out, what are their names? This one was written by Crosby, basically everybody in the Dead End. Okay, so it's similar to the second song.
Cowboy Movie.
Yes.
And I actually have a correction. It was Bill Kreutzmann that played on Tamalpais High.
Okay.
At about 3. And Michael Shreve plays on this song.
Okay.
You know, not to be forgotten is Paul Kantner's guitar playing. I think he's right there off to the left. This song is obviously a slow build burner.
Sure. It's like it's about 4 minutes.
And this song is very appropriate for the world we live in, the state of politics.
This doesn't sound like the death of a billion souls. Let's hear a little something from David on Neil Young joining Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
Well, it worked like this. There were two main reasons. One, on the record, Crosby, Stills, and Nash record, Stephen played both keyboard and guitar. He's a very bright lad that way. And he knew that when he had to play guitar, we needed somebody else. When he had to play keyboard, somebody else was going to have to play guitar. And also, he knew that Neil was terrific. I didn't really. I knew that he was good. I didn't realize how good. But in... It's either Joni's or Elliot Roberts, manager. One of their two driveways, I was sitting there waiting, and Neil drove by, saw me, pulled in, sat down. We sat down on the trunk of a car, and he sang me, I don't know, 4 songs. And I definitely wanted to be in the same group with that guy.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, come on. He sang
Helpless?
Helpless, Cowgirl, a couple others. You can't not want to. He's one of the best songwriters alive.
It's hard enough, I know, to find the strength to go back to where it all began. It's hard enough to gain an attraction in the rain. You know it's hard for me to understand, hard to find a way to get through another city day without thinking about getting out. Now the strangest thing I've seen was a t-shirt turning green in India, a turtle dove.
Somebody's jamming the harp.
Yeah, her name's Laura Allen. Not much is known about her.
Was that the first time anybody said jamming the harp?
Maybe. What are they tuning? A harp?
Really cool, mellow song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just Crosby and Laura Allen.
Yeah, just some guitars, 12-string over there on the left. And harp's a nice touch. But now I'm missing Graham Nash in there.
I thought you were going to say Phil Lesh.
Oh, God. I showed up to a Bob Dylan and Phil and Friends concert once, and Phil was the headliner. I was devastated. I was so pissed that whole concert. Like, I only get 45 minutes of Bob, and then I gotta listen to Phil?
That was in Indiana, right?
Yeah,
Creek.
I think it was Deer Creek.
I was at that show. We went to that because that show was on a Sunday night, and then Fish was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So we went to all 4 shows.
Well, weren't the guys? It was the guy from Little Feat. I think Little Feat guitarist, and who else was another guitarist? It was another really good guitar. Maybe Warren Haynes.
It was Warren Haynes was the guitar player, and who was the Phil and Friends band at that time?
It wasn't Derek Trucks. That was at the Breslin Center.
No, yeah.
That was fucking sweet. And that was Phil opening.
I know it was John Molo on drums, Rob Baracco on keys, Phil on bass, Warren Haynes.
I'm pretty sure it was the Little Feet guy.
Martin Barry?
I wouldn't know his name.
Yeah. Anyway. But, yeah, that's a cool tune.
Great one. Let's jump into the next one. Song with no words. Familiar tuning?
There's Graham. I mean, these guys could jam and just go do 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 for hours, and I would.
And they did that for a couple songs.
And I would love it.
This is just one of the doo-doo songs, right?
Yeah.
See, well, this is where George Martin would have been. Come back, boys, tomorrow with lyrics. Not that that's necessarily the right thing, but I think that's the difference in the producers here. Jerry's like, yeah, man, whatever. Like, it's.
Well, and you also have to remember that this was when Crosby was starting to get deep into
the heroin.
The heroin, yeah. He wasn't quite freebasing crack yet. That came later, but he was definitely like smoking heroin and cocaine, marijuana, obviously.
Well,
but
the 60s were a crazy thing to live through.
Well, that's the other part of it. This was the 70s and the 60s that ended, and I think a lot of these folks were disenchanted with how the 60s ended.
Yeah, I think a lot of them felt like they lost the war.
Yeah, and I think the way these songs, some of them don't finish, kind of serve as an analogy of that time.
Let's hear David talk a little bit about that.
I remember trading a 1939 herringbone dreadnought, stunner, for substance. And it's one of those things I got to live with. I'll regret it for the rest of my life, but there it was. I did it.
We're talking like
Unbelievable.
6 figures.
Yeah. You know, artists have for a long time said, oh, it's the turmoil in my life that I get this inspiration from. Bullshit. That's just an excuse for them having their lives in complete tatters. I get mine from being happy. That's really the only excuse, the only thing I can tell you about how I feel these days and why I'm writing so much these days is that I'm a happy guy.
His new stuff is not that bad, actually. Like, his last 3 albums, they're really inspired. He's got a lot of young musicians. And, but yeah, that's another episode. But yeah, that's really sad.
Yeah.
Almost as sad as Tim Hardin trading away all of his copyrights for a briefcase full of heroin.
Oh my God.
That's why he had Rod Stewart doing Reason to Believe.
Wow. That's horrible. Fucking addiction. So yeah, this was one of 4 albums released by each of the Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young guys after Deja Vu.
Mm-hmm.
Man. So they were almost breaking out like the Beatles after they broke up.
Yeah.
Everybody just went and did a solo album immediately.
Yep. And Crosby's is the best.
Oh.
Songs for Beginners is really good. Obviously after the Gold Rush.
Right after the Gold Rush.
Stephen Stills one is
I'm not
really
familiar
good.
with Stevens, but I'd never heard him do anything bad. And he is an amazing musician and voice. Jesus. Here's Orleans. This is the only song on the album that David didn't. This is an old traditional song.
Yeah, it's just Crosby. I mean, it's a lot of vocal stacks, and
Really, he's the only one on the track.
he's the only one on the track.
Ah, sounds great.
It's him on guitar and 6 or 7 different tracks of his vocals stacked on top of each other.
Sounds great. Cool tune and a traditional song that I don't think I've ever come across. It sounds, I mean, obviously it's in French, but I've never heard that one before. Let's jump right into the last song. I'd swear there was somebody here
There.
somewhere.
This song just started off as a vocal jam, obviously, and the story Crosby tells is that he was in the studio singing this, and he felt Christine's presence,
Whoa.
and it really spooked him, and
It's haunting.
very haunting, and that's why it's called "I'd Swear There Was Somebody There."
Well, there you go. Some of the stats on this thing. It peaked at number 12.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, shit. It was a strange time for music, so I mean,
Well, and especially for what it is. Like, coming from my perspective, it's not very songy. Almost nothing can be played on the radio. And in 1971, to bring this to your record company and ask them to put it out, that's asking a lot.
But you had David Geffen, who was willing to take a chance on all the musicians. This was on Geffen's label.
Really? What was the name of that label?
His first label was Asylum.
Oh, this was on Asylum. Okay, so the Dylan and the band's Planet Waves.
The first album on Asylum was released by this freak folk artist named Judy Sill.
No kidding.
Yeah, that's could be a whole nother
that
episode.
makes sense because Dylan and the band would have been like 3?
Yeah,
2?
yeah,
it would have been after this for sure.
Judy Sill was really surly. And she was also a hardcore heroin addict. But Geffen insisted on comparing her to Joni Mitchell, which she did not like. So she lashed out in the media and called Geffen the derogatory F word for someone who's homosexual.
Yes.
And so he subsequently kicked her off the label. And then she spent the next 8 or 9 years toiling in obscurity before dying of a heroin overdose.
Holy cannoli.
But anyway, back to Crosby. So, right, I get everything that you're saying, but to me, this album, it's an atmospheric. It's like 2 a.m. You're partying or whatever. You're ready to chill out. You're coming down. You put this on. And this album just carries you to sleep.
Sure.
I don't know. It's just, I've loved this album for years and years. And
it's a great album. I'm more of a song guy. So it didn't grab me right away. It sounds great. Like, I can tell that Jerry Garcia produced it. Song-wise, sonically, it's one of the best sounding, especially for 1971. It sounds great. I love the sound of the whole album. And Jerry did exactly what I would guess that Jerry would do producing songs-wise. I mean, it's very loose structure, very free form. Not necessarily having a chorus in a song or a bridge or outros, which there's nothing wrong with that. Not every song needs that. Not every album needs that. For me, I love the craft of song, and I love. And you know what? In a lot of ways, this is a whole nother form of the craft.
I love this album because it's very Crosby appropriate in the fact that that guy has 0 fucks to give about anything.
That is the truth.
And, he really suffered from writer's block after this album, too. He went years and years and years before releasing another solo album. I think it was mid-'80s, late 80s before he came out with another solo album. And if you listen to that podcast, he talks about all the regret that he has from all those years he spent, getting wasted, and there was the whole pistol firearm charge, and he was on the run and basically almost died a couple times. And
he's had a crazy life.
Oh man, I mean, if you think about it, this guy started off he was a child actor. He went to Greenwich, thank you, Greenwich Village to be a folk singer. He met Dylan back then. Then he met Roger McGuinn. He joined the Byrds, and the Byrds took Dylan's Tambourine Man and electrified it, and Dylan went, holy fuck, and then immediately went out and got an electric band and electrified his music, and then he was in Crosby, Stills and Nash, on and on and on, and just
a storied career.
Yeah,
many classic songs that we'll hear for the rest of our lives.
And I mean, he's such a surly bastard, and I love that about him. But I'm also like, why can't Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young get back together? Like, him and Nash hate each other, and it's really sad. It's like two of the best friends in the world that just...
Well, also all signs point to David and the things David says and does.
Well, David, all the guys in CSN and Y wanted to do was show up, turn on... This is what Crosby, I'm quoting Crosby, wanted to turn on the smoke machines, play the hits, collect the check, go home. Crosby wanted to create new music, and the dude's put out like 5 albums in the last 6 years.
No shit. Hey, that's Tom Petty. All Tom Petty ever did, as far as I'm concerned, throughout his career, is get better and make better albums. And there are those people that do that.
Mm-hmm.
David Crosby, it seems to me, to be one of those, because, like you said, that many albums at the end of his career like that, it's your whole life's a learning process, and you never learn everything in music. So it only makes sense to me as long as you're putting the effort in, and it does seem like David puts the effort in, especially at this age. You're going to produce great stuff just because of your experience.
Yeah, I mean, I want it to happen one more time, but then I also am afraid of like how bad it might be. But you know, Neil is Neil. Neil does whatever Neil wants to do. But what is Stills doing? Nothing. Nash tours every now and then, but you don't hear... I mean, he has new music, but it...
Yeah, he did that acoustic tour, and it looked to me it went pretty well. But, you know, playing small theaters. I mean, not playing large theaters in big places like Crosby, Stills, and Nash would do. But once you look at the cut, it's not really a business decision. They're probably out solo, making as much money as they would getting a slice of the CSN.
The sad thing, again, I keep referring to that podcast, is Crosby's talking about how he does not make any money off of the albums. He has to tour to make money. And he's not a rich musician like we think he would be. He said I have to go out to tour. I have to go out and tour to pay my
David made some
house payment.
Choices in his life that kind of
Right.
lent itself. I don't think Graham Nash is hurting too much.
Probably not.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, I'm sure he has an estate somewhere.
Yeah.
But hey, David's ending up with more stories and maybe more songs to write.
Yep. But so anyway, what's your overall grade on this album?
Okay. First listen was a C.
Okay.
Second listen, C plus. Didn't really jump that much. It's a solid B plus for me.
Okay. All right.
And that's pretty high praise on something that isn't just here are perfectly crafted songs. Like, that's kind of, I love that. And that's not what this album is, but it's still, for what it is, it's great.
I was getting ready to storm out of your studio if it had not jumped above a C plus.
It's hard for me to give this an A. All the potential's there. It's that little George Martin on my shoulder saying, "Dig deeper, boys." There's a little bit more left there.
Get used to it constantly coming back to the Beatles.
Speaking of which,
but yeah, this album's an A for me. I revisit it often.
It's a great listen. Well, I'm going to challenge you. We won't hear this until at least after John Lennon's Walls and Bridges.
Which is our next episode, right?
Yes, sir. I am going to challenge you to listen to the 1996 album Into the Sun by Sean Lennon.
Broken glass that fades. The past is a parade of countless days. Painting patterns in the sand.
I think he was 20 years old when he made this. I'll dig a little deeper before we get into it.
I got to see Sean Lennon once.
With Cibo Matto?
Oh, sorry. No, he was not with Cibo Matto at that time.
You say Cibo, I say Cibo.
Cibo. No, I saw him open for Ben Folds 5 and Beck.
Oh, at Pine Knob?
Yep.
I was there. I missed Sean Lennon. I heard him from the parking lot. I was young and doing bad things in the parking lot. But we made it in. But what? No, it was.
That's why you missed Dylan, because you were old and doing bad things in the parking lot. Yeah, you can't blame Phil for your missing Bob Dylan.
No, I didn't miss Bob.
Oh, you only caught a little bit of Bob.
No, I saw all of Bob. But when Bob walked out on that stage and not Phil to open the damn show, I lost my shit.
They must have been alternating headlines.
Yeah, they were, and I caught them on the wrong night. Oh, and it was when Bob had Larry Campbell and Charlie Sexton in the band. It was so good. There was a good 5-7 year run. Whenever those guys, it was just mind blowing. And I saw them probably 20 times in that little span, and it was just every show was so good.
Yeah, that was such a great year, seeing that show. 3 nights of the band that I mentioned way too often. Regardless, challenge accepted. So Sean Lennon's Into the Sun, it shall be.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you all for sticking around.
Yeah, thanks for listening. And, we want to hear your feedback. You know, love it, hate it. Drop us a line.
Yeah.
Hit us up on Facebook.
We don't care, but we still need feedback.
Right. I mean, we sort of care, but not really. But we just want to know you're listening. So.
Yeah. No, and we appreciate it if you do. This is just fun for us. And,
Yep.
Hope somebody out there enjoys it.
Well, thanks a lot, folks. This video and or podcast includes copyrighted material for the sole purpose of commentary, review, and education regarding the copyrighted material. The vinyl cut makes no claims of ownership of any of this copyrighted material. This use is protected under United States law, specifically Section 107 of the Copyright Act, as it applies to fair use of copyrighted material for the purpose of criticism and commentary. If you are the owner of any copyrighted material appearing here and wish for it not to be utilized for this purpose, please contact us directly at wardellc@msu.edu and be sure to check out the vinyl cut on Facebook.